Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really honored and privileged to be here this morning. I came this morning mainly to learn, and this was really a wish that I fully I fully fulfilled this morning listening to my predecessor, the professor, who give me and all of us a very, very rich background about what was the context of this international congress. Now I will change. My speech will be mainly a practical one, the viewpoint of a prosecutor, a practitioner who is working on daily basis in the construction of the new European judicial area. I was an anti-corruption prosecutor in Spain. I was specialized in international cooperation because I was a European Judicial Network contact point in Costa del Sol and the south of Spain. I came from Malaga. I was working in the prosecution office of Malaga as an anti-corruption prosecutor. And in 2012, I took my position as national member for Spain at Eurojust. Eurojust is a relatively new agency, European Union agency. We are teenagers because now we are 17 years old, but with a lot of experience in this field. And I would like to provide you a very optimistic viewpoint of the current situation, because we have also reasons to be really optimistic. One friend of mine, he is now a magistrate of the Supreme Court in Spain, and once he recommended me, if you have to speak in public, you need a clear idea and also perhaps one anecdote and one joke. Well, yes. Unfortunately, I am from the south of Spain, but I am not a good joke teller. But I will try to give you a clear idea of what is the situation in relation to the construction of this, what we so-called the area of freedom, security, of justice. Perhaps I can find one anecdote also. But the idea I would like clearly to put on the table is that this construction is working, and perhaps the most ambitious plans are not fully under construction, but a federal prosecution office or a federal court, but step by step, as the Schuman Declaration showed us, step by step, not as a Big Bang movement or a Big Bang creation, step by step with a practical approach where we are there. The question of this presentation was twofold. What does Eurojust to foster justice and peace in Europe? And how to smoothen the polarized interests and attitudes? And finally, the need of ethical behavior. Justice is obviously interlinked with peace, and is essential for developing the wealth of a country, and also prevent conflicts and in particular wars. And I remember that I commute on daily basis from North Holland to The Hague, and I take my bike at the central station, and I pass by the Hoge Raad. No, yes, the Supreme Court,
yeah.
And there is a famous sentence of, as Hugo Grotius reminds us, "Ubi judicia defeciunt incipit bellum." Then justice and peace are really, really interlinked. But I will try to focus on justice, because I am not an expert or a peacemaker. I am not an expert on international organizations devoted to the construction of peace mainly in the third world. But because justice is our main purpose, our main task, our main goal for those who are working at Eurojust. Well, what is Eurojust? This is the first question that is, because sometimes we think everyone knows, but it's not true. Even we have to promote Eurojust within our colleagues. You know? I have what we call domestic missions, and monthly I visit my colleagues in Spain, all over Spain, trying to explain then what is Eurojust. Prosecutors, judges, court clerks, not defense lawyers, because one thing that is important to bear in mind is that this European space area and mutual trust is mainly for judicial authorities. Eurojust is an institution that is devoted to the build of and the support of judges and prosecutors. Mutual trust is between judicial authorities, and we cannot include defense lawyers, because the main task of the defense lawyers is to distrust judicial decisions, to challenge judicial decisions. Then we are fighting against organized crime and terrorism, but we are within the judicial authorities' scope and field. No? And it is also very important, because when I will refer to mutual trust, I am referring to the mutual trust between judicial authorities. Mutual trust, coordination, and partnerships are the key words of our daily work. Eurojust is an agency. Then we have legal personality, and it's an agency for judicial cooperation in criminal matters. Then we are in the field of justice and home affairs. And there you can find 9 agencies where we are in the agency which is most involved in, operationally speaking, in the criminal justice dimension of the area of freedom, security, or justice. And it's a new body. We have 17 years, as I mentioned you before, and our main purpose is to support and to strengthen the cooperation between judicial authorities and mainly in the field of cooperation and coordination. Cooperation is a single word. It's simpler than coordination, because cooperation is focused on facilitating the execution of rogatory letters, extradition demands, or what we call the European arrest warrant, freezing orders, all sorts of legal instruments that we have on the table and we can use not only in our domestic legislation, but mainly when we are dealing with the international implications of an investigation on a case. But there is a step further, that is the coordination. Coordination means different parallel ongoing investigation and not just the mere or punctual facilitation of a request or the execution of a concrete judicial resolution. And coordination is where we deploy all of our possibilities, and that is why we have a very nice building in The Hague where we can organize coordination meetings, and we can set around the same table prosecutors from all over Europe and also from third countries, judges, of course, police investigators. And this is our main added value, the possibility to fight with these really efficient operational tools, organized crime and terrorism. what is not Eurojust? Because I think it's important to be realistic and to know exactly what are we doing and where are we. We are not a federal prosecution office. We are not a federal court. We don't work at a national level running investigations. We are not attending court trials at a national level. Then we are a sort of criminal justice provider or service provider, and we are supporting our home authorities. When I was an anti-corruption prosecutor, of course, I had my own cases, I have my own investigations, but now I open what I call instrumental files in order to support and to help my home authorities. And not only my home authorities, and that is very important, I am supporting judicial authorities from the rest of the European member states and also from third states. And how we developed this supporting role, not only with this cooperation and coordination possibilities, but also providing them a very specialized support in relation to legal and practical issues and bottlenecks that they are still there, and we are not in an ideal world where direct communication between judicial authorities solve all the problems, because we are still in a stage where these sort of organizations are necessary. We try to provide them the best support from the legal and the practical side. Also, there are aspects that are under development, like the support we provide to joint investigation teams, and also in the field of conflict of jurisdictions with our non-binding recommendations. Then this is more or less the scope that we have and the activities that we can put at the service of our colleagues. Practical approach, solution for the bottlenecks and problems, and fostering on daily basis mutual trust between our judicial authorities. And why Eurojust was set up at the beginning of this century? Well, we had a very important Council of Ministers summit in Tampere in October 1999, where they set up a declaration, a sort of roadmap, establishing that, for example, the mutual recognition is the cornerstone for international cooperation, and replacing the traditional mutual legal assistance system. And they also, the policymakers and the masters within the policy field in Europe decided to set up this agency, this institution, a college of prosecutors, in order to support and to facilitate the international cooperation. And why this decision was taken? Well, mainly because the triggering situation was an economic situation. The suppression of the disappearance of the gradually disappearance of the border controls, border checks, in order to have the common market, the single economic area, demand also a compensation measures from the security viewpoint. And that is why when no borders, we have no internal borders in the European Union. No internal borders mean that criminals that prepare and commit terrorist attacks, or with criminals that are trafficking in human beings, or dealing with drugs, arms, etc., or laundering ill-gotten gains, they have no borders. Then they have more facilities, and borders are still there for prosecutors, for police, and for judges. That is why we decided to start with this, not only with the normative harmonization, but also considering the need of a sort of institutional harmonization between judicial systems and harmonization between legal systems. And I can tell you that this is a very, very ambitious project, or was a very ambitious project, but the results are so far very good, and show us that these sort of projects are also possible. I would like to underline what are the difficulties, or what were the difficulties, and what are still the difficulties that we have to face. Well, as I told you, Europe practically never creates anything as a big bang, no? Always step by step, practical approach, practical cooperation, pilot projects, and also trial and errors. But in this field, we see at the huge and almost revolutionary changes that we made, and I have witnesses, we can say that in the field of the judicial cooperation during the last 2 decades, we have benchmarks like the 2000 Convention with the principle of direct communication between judicial authorities, the development of the principle of mutual recognition, the European arrest warrant, the new challenges like the European investigation order, instruments based on the mutual recognition system. That means that judicial decisions can really circulate within the European Union in a very smooth way, and we have liberty, freedom of exchange of evidence. Of course, new possibilities opened mainly by the Lisbon Treaty, like the resolution of conflicts of jurisdictions and the European Public Prosecutor's Office. Then we have to realize and come to the conclusion that a lot of very good work have been done during these 2 decades, and an agency like Europol is indispensable in order to contribute to make all that happen. If one had said 20 years ago I was a young prosecutor working in south of Spain, if anyone once said that 20 years ago that Eurojust would exist and that it would have this year the most recent statistic and figures that we have 2,550 cases and organize more than 300 coordination meetings per year in relation to serious and organized crime and terrorism, while most of policymakers, experts, professors, and also prosecutors will have considered this really unthinkable. And yet, Eurojust exists and does precisely that, and in a success manner. Each time we have a coordination meeting, each time we support the setting up of a joint investigation team, we are really growing the trust and the confidence of our practitioners, our colleagues in this agency. But furthermore, if we would have said also 20 years ago that the EPPO, the European Prosecutor's Office, would be provided in the Lisbon Treaty, and it was, and that after the Lisbon Treaty was signed in 2009, and that finally was adopted a resolution establishing the European Public Prosecutor Office last year in October, I have to say the same. That also will have been unthinkable for most of the policy makers, of the university professors, and also most of the prosecutors working in the European Union. Only a few group of dreamers even for those few group of dreamers is really unthinkable, and we have it in place. Then dreams may come to reality, and ambitious projects in the field of criminal justice are possible, feasible, and achievable. And the area of freedom, security, and justice is not just a window dressing exercise. I like that expression, but it's not true. I heard it a lot of times. This is a window dressing exercise. This is not really, it's not a sound and consistent project, but it is. And we have to realize, be aware, and be very proud of these achievements. Why? Because it's not wishful thinking, it's a reality, and we manage to face and to challenge what is the situation, and many of you probably know what is criminal justice. Criminal justice is the last stronghold of sovereignty, of the sovereignty of the state. Then any achievement in this particular field is really commendable. And I would like to underline this. Indeed, the creation, the setup, the construction of the area of justice, of freedom, security, and justice represents the most important recent development in the European constitutionalism. And this is also something that we have to bear in mind. The origin maybe was triggered by the economic situation of that I already mentioned you, and also the attacks we suffer, the terrorism attacks since the 9/11 attack. But also there is a political agenda, there is a political will, and also the work of many colleagues working on daily basis, not only where I am working now in The Hague, but also on the spot in each prosecution, a local prosecution office, and because we all share the same core values, with the conviction that we have to work on a solid basis from the primacy of the rule of law, because cooperation can be also reached without taking into account the primacy of rule of law. I remember when we had the dictatorship in Spain, and also Salazar was in Portugal, we had a very good relations and a very good coordination. And fugitives were surrendered in this cross-border exchange of prisoners, but that is not coordination. No. The coordination, the good coordination is the one that we have here now, with a solid primacy of the rule of law, and with core values like freedom, democracy, respect of fundamental rights, and human dignity. Well, let me make another reflection about criminal law, because of course I am optimistic, but of course we have tensions between intergovernmental cooperation and supranational European integration. And I think the Visegrad Hub is a very good example also in the judicial field of what are the tensions we have to face. But in addition, we have additional difficulties. Criminal procedural laws differs considerably from one country to other. And why? Well, the reason is very simple. Criminal procedural laws set the limits of the power of a state vis-à-vis any citizen, not only convicted criminals, but also in respect of any citizen. Any citizen can be a suspect. Any citizen can be or could be subject to house searches, freezing of properties, telephone surveillance in the framework of our investigation of our criminal procedure. That is why Professor Klaus Roxin, a German professor, defined the criminal procedural laws like the seismograph of the Constitution, because there you have really, criminal procedures is a standard to measure the degree of democracy of a given society. And that is why, as I told you before, I mentioned before, is the stronghold of the state sovereignty, and that is why there is a tendency, a state tendency to not only to be chauvinistic about their own criminal justice system, and we realize that this is not only a tendency but a reality when you work in a European agency like Eurojust with many colleagues from the other member states and the other countries, but also to be suspicious about foreign legal systems. Then efforts towards a normative and institutional harmonization in the field of criminal justice are difficult and really difficult, and we should be then, as I mentioned before, very, very proud and really realize that the achievements that were made are well, commendable, and as I mentioned before. Well, as a matter of fact, the nationalism approach is still there, and is still there even in our primary law. The Article 67 of the Treaty of Lisbon referred to the protection at the same level, to the protection of human rights and fundamental rights, but at the same level, protection of national judicial traditions. You can see that it is still a strong concept. Furthermore, Eurojust is an agency ruled by a college composed of 28 national members. And these 28 national members, most of them prosecutors, myself, I am a prosecutor, are seconded by their respective member states on temporary basis. Then this structure reflects also an intergovernmental approach. Then we have intergovernmental cooperation. It was informal at the beginning of the 90s. After the Treaty of Amsterdam, more formal intergovernmental cooperation. Now we have the Treaty of Lisbon, and most of the legal instruments are replaced. Framework decisions are replaced by directives and regulations. Then the possibility of direct application of these legal instruments coming from the European Union level, and I fully agree with my predecessor in this table speaking to you, that these council authorities drafting laws are really terrible. Sometimes the quality of these laws is not the best, and we have to apply. When we have to apply in practice, we have to face a lot of difficulties. But I have to insist, step by step, with a practical approach, improving legislation in the coming years. I think we are in the right direction. We have to face also another tensions between repression of crime and protection of fundamental rights, the tensions between security, justice, security, and fundamental rights. The Commission motto, an open and secure Europe making it happen, shows us perfectly well that this dichotomy of a space fencing European Union at the same time to be open to the world is there. Open and secure Europe. Well, the thing is that in many times we consider that this area of freedom, security, or justice is a privilege and a sacred space. And that is our understanding, and that is why we have nationalisms and populism, and because fear is there, as you mentioned before. Secure inside is protected for unsecure outside. And both freedom and justice, that are core values, are at risk because they would acquire a narrow meaning, devoid of any ethical dimension. Why? Because it sacralize security and don't take into account that the only thing that is really important and is core is the human life and dignity, and you just consider security as an objective and a goal. Yes, you are really empowering. You are really having a narrow meaning of what is justice and freedom. And I will put on the table my anecdote. When we discuss in the college plenary meeting at Eurojust, the motto of Eurojust is criminal justice across borders. And we set up a working group, and within this working group, several national members, also with professionals coming from these, coming from an agency for advertisement and publicity in this area. They discuss different logos and different mottos. The discussion was focused on the keywords. Finally, the motto reflects that we are an agency working in the field of criminal justice. That is very good. It's really realistic, and this criminal justice is the remit of our competencies. But I was against the use of the word borders, because I think borders itself is a negative word, and of course we are there in order to overcome these difficulties that are stemming from the borders. But I think the key word is cooperation, and the cooperation is not in this motto. And I suggest the possibility to have the motto, the power of judicial cooperation. But one of my colleagues addressed me and said to me, well, but that motto is not serious. It sounds like a very famous song, no? The Power of Love, no? Okay. I thought that precisely was the purpose, no? To have a very direct motto, no? Including the word cooperation. But these discussions, just an anecdote, but these discussions reflect that most of my colleagues consider that borders is a key word even for a motto. You have how many? 4 or 5 words, and borders was included. No? Don't forget that we are prosecutors. We are judicial authorities, but at the same time we are in charge of promoting criminal justice and criminal proceedings. No? And we have a very difficult position sometimes, because we are not investigators. We are jurists, we are lawyers, but we have to present the case before the court, and at the same time we are the guardians of the law, the guardians of the fundamental rights, and also the defense of the independence of judiciary. Then too many tasks for one single person. No? But it's important that the judicial dimension should be a very important dimension in this European or the area of freedom, security, or justice. Because my impression, and when I was a vice president of Eurojust, I have the opportunity and the privilege to attend COSI meetings in the Council of the European Union in Brussels. My impression is that I was like a Chinese pot in the room, because most of the representatives there around the table were representatives from ministers of interior, and only the Dutch one, I think, yes, the Dutch one, because you have Ministry of Interior and Justice in the same department or ministerial department. Then the lack of viewpoint from the judicial side was evident. And that is why they discuss a lot of on security issues, but not on fundamental rights and not on other legal issues that I think are well the backbone of the construction of this new architecture, no? This new normative architecture for the European Union. Well, I would like to make a very short reference of what is what are our main activities. Eurojust in action. What we do when we receive our national authorities at Eurojust. Well, mainly our golden product, speaking in a business language, is our coordination meetings. When we have a case, and the case is normally we have the higher level cases in Europe, corruption cases, massive fraud cases, money laundering cases, VATA, carousel fraud cases, trafficking in human beings. We have a list of 9 crime priorities, the most important and serious crimes. Well, and we consider that there is a need for cooperation, there is a need for coordinating the actions to be taken. We convene our judicial authorities and organize these coordination meetings, and we receive them. We have normally multilateral coordination meetings with more than 2 countries involved, and also third countries. The last coordination meeting I had was also with the Brazilian authorities and the authorities from Andorra that are now really involved in many corruption cases, even FIFA corruption cases that are really interesting because I like a lot football. No? Well, they have the possibility to discuss face to face, and that is really priceless. Yes. Because for the first time in Europe, prosecutors, judges, investigators, and other investigators coming from the tax administration, customs administration, because we have a very important multidisciplinary approach. They can discuss and they can try to, in an informal way, because our legal framework is based on what we call spontaneous exchange of information. We can really look for the best solution in order to facilitate the execution of rogatory letters, European arrest warrants, extradition demands, etc. But we can also improve what is the investigation strategy, setting up JITs, as I mentioned before, identifying conflict of jurisdictions in order to avoid nevis in idem, then to avoid the possibility or that one person is subject to 2 different or 3 different investigations in different countries, and also to try to look for a solution in relation to the diversity of standards that we have in relation to admissibility of evidence, the problems that we have to face now with e-evidence, electronic evidence. Cybercrime is a challenge for all of us because there is a loss of jurisdiction and we don't know if we are investigating under our competencies is a crime that is really out of our scope. And finally, let me end with a reference to what we should be in the future. We should be open to the society. Of course, mutual trust is between judicial authorities, but we should transmit to the society what are our developments, what are our benefits, the added value of this sort of institutions that are really unknown by the public. Try to convince and try to explain to our citizens that we are not a very exclusive club of prosecutors, but we are public servants that are working for the society in order to improve the quality of justice and to, of course, to assure security Europe. Our past, our present, our future is firmly based on the notions of trust, cooperation, and partnership. But everything from the primacy of the rule of law. These concepts are grafted in our DNA, and it's important to also to transmit and to have the ability of transmit these notions also to the general public. Yesterday, a very good colleague and a friend of mine sent me a farewell message, and he quoted. He made a quotation of Huxley, and he said to me that the experience at Eurojust was something that really changed himself. And the quotation was that I wanted to change the world, but I have found that the only thing one can be sure of changing is oneself. Well, I hope that this experience also can make you change the knowledge that you have and the conviction that you have, the knowledge that you have about an agency that like Eurojust. Hopefully, I ensure that the experience working for Eurojust have changed me, have changed my family also, and I think for being much better, have a very comprehensive notion of what is Europe, a very positive one. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.